The billionaire thought his maid couldn't even read. But when she pointed out a $12 million mistake in his report, he discovered a truth about her that would change both of their lives forever. Stay tuned, because you are about to watch a beautiful story and find out what happened next. Hello family, welcome to Tales by King. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories. Thank you as you do so. Sit back, relax as we dive into the story. The tall glass building of Hale Global Investments stood proudly in the center of Brookfield City. From a distance, the tower looked like a giant mirror reflecting the bright morning sky. Thousands of people passed by the building every day. Inside those walls, deals worth millions of dollars were discussed, contracts were signed, and decisions were made that could change entire companies. At the very top floor worked the owner of the company, billionaire Adrian Hale. Adrian Hale had built his empire through intelligence, discipline, and hard work. Before the age of 40, he had become one of the most successful investors in the country. But Adrian was not known for being warm or friendly. He believed emotions had no place in business. Numbers mattered. Results mattered. Everything else was a distraction. Most employees admired him from a distance. Very few people truly knew him. While the business world slept, the building came alive very early in the morning. At 6:30 a.m., the cleaning staff quietly entered through the service entrance. Their job was simple: make sure the building looked perfect before the executives arrived. Among them was a young woman named Emma Carter. Emma pushed her cleaning cart slowly through the long hallway of the executive floor. The wheels of the cart rolled softly across the carpet. She wore a simple gray uniform with the company logo on the pocket. Her dark hair was tied neatly behind her head, and her movements were calm and careful. Emma had been working there for only 3 months. Most employees barely noticed her. When they walked past her, they usually looked through her as if she were invisible. To them, Emma was simply the maid. But Emma never complained. Every morning she arrived early, worked quietly, and left before the building became busy. Because outside that building, Emma had responsibilities. After finishing work each day, she traveled across the city to a small apartment where her younger brother and sister lived with her. Their parents were gone. Emma had become their guardian, their provider, and their support. She paid the rent. She bought the food. She helped them with school. Her dreams had been put aside long ago. Years earlier, Emma had studied finance at the university. She had been one of the top students in her class. Her professors believed she had a brilliant future ahead of her. But life had different plans. When her father suddenly passed away and her mother became ill, Emma had no choice but to leave school. The bills became too heavy. Her family needed help immediately. So Emma took the first job she could find, cleaning offices. And now, every morning, she cleaned the offices of people who lived the life she once dreamed of. That morning, Emma pushed her cart toward the largest office on the floor. At the end of the hallway stood a large wooden door. The name on the door read, Adrian Hale, CEO. Emma knocked lightly. There was no answer. She opened the door carefully. The office was enormous. Large glass windows stretched from the floor to the ceiling, showing the entire city slowly waking up below. Sunlight began to shine through the glass, filling the room with a soft golden glow. A long glass desk stood in the center of the office. Several expensive paintings decorated the walls. Everything about the room showed power, success, and wealth. Emma quietly began her work. She wiped the windows carefully, then dusted the bookshelves along the wall. After that, she walked toward the large desk. The desk was covered with several stacks of documents, financial reports, investment plans, international contracts. Emma carefully moved some papers aside while cleaning. She tried not to look at them. But something on one page caught her attention for a brief moment. A line of numbers. Percentages. Emma paused. She quickly looked away and continued cleaning. But when she passed the desk again, her eyes landed on the same page. Something about the numbers felt strange. Emma leaned slightly closer. She read the line quietly in her mind. Her heart suddenly beat faster. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Before she could think about it further, the office door suddenly opened. Emma stepped back quickly. Standing in the doorway was Adrian Hale. He had arrived earlier than usual that morning. Adrian walked into the room while speaking into his phone. "Yes," he said calmly. "The overseas project is worth $12 million. I want the final confirmation today." He ended the call and finally noticed Emma standing near the desk. She lowered her eyes respectfully. "Sorry, sir," she said softly. Adrian barely looked at her. "Just finish quickly," he replied coldly. Emma nodded. "Yes, sir." Adrian sat down at his desk and began reviewing the same financial report Emma had just noticed. The deal he was about to approve involved an international investment worth $12 million. Several senior analysts had worked on the report for weeks. Everything seemed ready. Emma quietly wiped the edge of the desk. But the numbers she had seen earlier stayed in her mind. She looked at the report again. Her heart began racing. The calculation was wrong. If the contract was approved with that mistake, the company would lose millions. Emma froze. Should she say something? She was just a maid. What if she was wrong? The analysts who prepared the report were experts. But what if she was right? Emma took a small breath. Then she spoke carefully. "Sir." Adrian looked up slightly. "Yes." Emma hesitated for a moment. Then she pointed gently at the report. "I think there might be a mistake in that calculation." Adrian slowly lifted his head. His expression showed clear disbelief. "A mistake," he repeated. Emma nodded quietly. "Yes, sir." Adrian leaned back in his chair and studied her carefully. Then he spoke slowly. "You believe you found a mistake in a $12 million financial report prepared by my senior analysts?" Emma felt nervous, but she remained calm. "Yes." For a moment, Adrian almost smiled. Then he folded his arms. "All right," he said. His voice carried curiosity now. "Show me." For a moment, the office became completely silent. Emma stood beside the desk, holding the cleaning cloth in her hand. Across from her, Adrian Hale watched her carefully. The early morning sunlight was now filling the office through the large windows. Adrian slowly pushed the financial report toward Emma. "Go ahead," he said calmly. "Show me the mistake." Emma hesitated for a second. She was not used to standing so close to the company's powerful CEO. But the numbers in the report were still clear in her mind. She leaned forward slightly and pointed to one line on the paper. "This percentage," she said softly. Adrian looked down. "What about it?" Emma swallowed nervously but continued. "This tax rate is calculated as 15%, but the overseas contract you're using applies a different tax regulation." Adrian frowned slightly. Emma pointed again. "If you use the correct rate, the projected return becomes negative." Adrian narrowed his eyes. He quickly pulled his laptop closer and opened the financial model. The clicking sound of the keyboard filled the quiet room. Emma stepped back, unsure if she had just made a terrible mistake. Maybe she had misunderstood the numbers. Maybe she had embarrassed herself. But Adrian kept typing. Then suddenly his fingers stopped. He looked at the screen again, then back at the report, then back at the screen. His expression changed. The maid was right. A small calculation error had been made when the analysts adjusted the overseas tax rate. It looked minor on paper, but the result was huge. If the company signed the contract as it was, the investment would lose nearly $12 million. Adrian slowly leaned back in his chair. For the first time that morning, he looked at Emma with real interest. "How did you notice that?" he asked quietly. Emma looked uncomfortable. "I just saw it," she replied softly. Adrian stared at her. "This report was reviewed by 6 senior analysts," he said. "Each of them has years of financial experience." Emma remained silent. Adrian leaned forward again. "And you noticed it in a few seconds while cleaning my desk." Emma looked down. "I'm sorry if I overstepped," she said. "I didn't mean to interfere." Adrian waved his hand slightly. "That's not the point." He stood up slowly and walked around the desk. Now he stood directly in front of her. You can read financial reports, he said. Emma nodded quietly. Yes. Adrian studied her face carefully. Where did you learn that? Emma hesitated. She had avoided this question for years. Most people didn't care to ask. But Adrian was clearly not going to drop it. Finally, she answered honestly. I studied finance at the university. Adrian raised his eyebrows. You studied finance? Emma nodded again. Yes. And you left school to become a cleaner? Adrian asked. Emma looked slightly embarrassed. My father became very sick during my final year, she explained. We spent everything trying to help him. She paused for a moment. But he passed away. Adrian remained silent. Emma continued quietly. My younger brother and sister still needed support. Someone had to work. So I left school and took whatever job I could find. She glanced at the cleaning cart standing near the door. This one was available. Adrian walked slowly toward the large window and looked out at the city. The morning traffic had begun to fill the streets below. His mind was racing. A brilliant finance student, forced to leave university, working as a cleaner, yet still sharp enough to notice a mistake that 6 analysts had missed. Adrian turned back toward Emma. What university? He asked. Brookfield Business University, Emma replied. Adrian nodded slowly. That was one of the best finance schools in the region. He suddenly became curious. Do you remember the formulas used for international tax adjustments? He asked. Emma blinked slightly. Yes. Adrian walked back to the desk and grabbed another report. He placed it in front of her. Then tell me something, he said. What would you do differently here? Emma looked at the page. For a moment, the nervous cleaner disappeared. Her eyes became focused. Her mind returned to the world she once loved. She quickly scanned the document. Then she pointed to another section. This risk projection is too optimistic, she said calmly. The currency exchange could shift the entire return. Adrian watched her carefully. She wasn't guessing. She understood exactly what she was reading. He felt something he rarely felt in business. Surprise. Real surprise. After a moment, Adrian closed the report slowly. Interesting, he said. Emma stepped back again. Should I finish cleaning now, sir? She asked politely. Adrian did not answer immediately. Instead, he continued studying her. A question had begun forming in his mind. A question that would soon change everything. Finally, Adrian spoke. Emma, he said calmly. Yes, sir? Where do you live? Emma looked confused. Across the river, she answered. Adrian nodded slowly. Then he said something completely unexpected. Tonight, after work. I want to see it. Emma blinked in surprise. See my home? Adrian nodded. Yes. Emma did not understand why the billionaire CEO would want to visit the small apartment where she lived. But Adrian already knew something important. Some of the greatest talents in the world were not always sitting in boardrooms. Sometimes, they were pushing a cleaning cart down the hallway. And Adrian Hale had just discovered one of them. That evening, the city of Brookfield slowly began to calm down. Office workers left their buildings, restaurants started filling with customers, and the orange light of the setting sun spread across the tall buildings. Inside Hale Global Investments, most employees had already gone home. Emma finished cleaning the last office on the executive floor and placed the cleaning supplies back on her cart. Her mind kept returning to the conversation she had earlier with Adrian Hale. The billionaire CEO had asked to see where she lived. The thought made her nervous. Why would someone like him care about a maid's home? Emma pushed the thought aside and prepared to leave the building. As she reached the front entrance, she saw a familiar black car waiting outside. Leaning lightly against the car was Adrian Hale himself. Emma stopped in surprise. Sir, she said softly. Adrian straightened slightly. Are you ready to go? He asked. Emma blinked. You were serious about visiting my home? Adrian nodded calmly. Yes. Emma hesitated for a moment. Her apartment was small and simple. Nothing like the luxury homes Adrian was used to. But she finally nodded. All right. They both got into the car, and the driver began moving through the evening traffic. The city lights slowly came on as the car crossed the large bridge leading to the older part of Brookfield. Adrian quietly looked outside the window. This part of the city was very different from the financial district. The buildings were older. The streets were narrower. Life here was simpler. Finally, the car stopped in front of a small apartment building. It was not broken or abandoned, but it was clearly old. Emma stepped out first. "This is where I live," she said gently. Adrian stepped out and looked around. The building was modest, but the area felt peaceful. Emma walked toward the entrance and unlocked the door. "Please come in," she said politely. Inside the apartment was a small living room with simple furniture. The room was clean and well organized. On a small table were several school books and notebooks. Suddenly, two children ran out from the bedroom. "Emma," they shouted happily. The younger boy hugged her tightly. "We finished our homework," he said proudly. Emma laughed softly and hugged him back. "That's good, Daniel." Then the older girl walked over. She looked curious when she saw Adrian standing near the door. "Emma, who is he?" she asked. Emma smiled gently. "This is Mr. Hale. He works at the company where I clean." Adrian watched the scene quietly. He had expected a small apartment, but he had not expected the warmth inside it. The children were smiling. The room felt alive. It felt like a real home. Adrian looked at Emma. "You're raising them?" he asked softly. Emma nodded. "They're my younger brother and sister." The girl stepped forward and offered her hand politely. "My name is Sophia," she said. Adrian shook her hand and smiled slightly. "And this troublemaker is Daniel," Emma said, gently touching the boy's head. Daniel grinned. Adrian looked around the apartment again. There were small drawings taped to the wall. Family photos. School certificates. Everything showed effort and care. Even though the apartment was small, Emma had clearly worked hard to make it comfortable. Daniel suddenly looked at Adrian curiously. "Are you rich?" the boy asked directly. Emma looked embarrassed. "Daniel." But Adrian laughed softly. "Well, some people say I am." Daniel's eyes widened. "Wow." Sophia looked thoughtful. "Then why do you look so serious?" she asked. Adrian blinked slightly. "Serious?" Sophia nodded. "My teachers say people who smile are usually happier." Emma tried not to laugh. Adrian stood silently for a moment. Then he slowly smiled. It felt strange, but also natural. After a few minutes, Emma prepared tea for everyone. They all sat around the small table. Adrian listened quietly as the children talked about school. Daniel explained how he wanted to become an engineer. Sophia talked about a science project she was working on. Emma watched them with quiet pride. Adrian noticed something important. Emma had given up her own dreams, so her siblings could still have theirs. After a while, Adrian stood up. "I should go," he said. Emma walked him to the door. "Thank you for coming," she said politely. Adrian looked at her seriously. "No," he replied. "Thank you for showing me something important." Emma looked confused. "What do you mean?" Adrian looked around the apartment one last time. "You have very little here," he said. "But this place has something many rich homes don't." Emma tilted her head slightly. "What?" Adrian smiled gently. "Purpose." Emma didn't fully understand what he meant, but Adrian already knew something had changed inside him. For years he had believed success only came from boardrooms, business meetings, and powerful deals. But tonight he had seen something far more valuable. Character. As Adrian walked back to his car, he made a quiet decision. Emma Carter would not remain a maid forever. Not if he had anything to say about it. The next morning at Hale Global Investments, the atmosphere in the building felt unusual. Employees whispered quietly in the hallways. Assistants hurried between offices. Managers checked their emails again and again. Early that morning, everyone had received the same message from the CEO's office. Mandatory company meeting at 10 a.m. in the main conference hall. That alone was enough to make people nervous. Billionaire Adrian Hale almost never called full company meetings. When he did, something important was about to happen. Meanwhile, Emma arrived at work as usual. She pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway, unaware of the storm of curiosity moving through the company. As she reached the executive floor, Adrian's assistant approached her. "Emma," the assistant said. Emma stopped. "Yes. Mr. Hale would like to see you in the conference hall at 10. Emma blinked in surprise. "Me?" The assistant nodded. "Yes." Emma's heart began beating faster. She had never been invited to a company meeting before. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked nervously. The assistant smiled slightly. "No. Just be there." Emma nodded slowly and continued cleaning, but her mind was now full of questions. Why would the CEO want her at a meeting with the entire company? Had she made a mistake? Had she offended him somehow? The hours passed slowly until finally it was time. At 10 a.m., the large conference hall was completely full. Hundreds of employees sat in rows of chairs. Senior analysts, managers, assistants, and executives all filled the room. People continued whispering. "What do you think this meeting is about? I heard it has something to do with the overseas project." "No, I think the company is announcing a new investment." Suddenly the doors at the side of the hall opened. Adrian Hale walked in. Immediately the room became silent. He walked confidently to the front of the hall. But he was not alone. Walking beside him was Emma, still wearing her simple cleaning uniform. The moment people noticed her, whispers spread across the room. "Why is the maid here? What's going on?" Emma felt hundreds of eyes on her. Her face grew warm with embarrassment. She had never stood in front of so many people before. Adrian raised his hand for silence. The whispers slowly stopped. "Good morning," he began calmly. His deep voice filled the large hall. "Yesterday, this company nearly made a very expensive mistake." Employees looked at each other in confusion. Adrian continued. "A financial report involving a $12 million international investment contained a calculation error." Now the room became even quieter. Several analysts in the audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Adrian looked directly at them. That report was reviewed by 6 of our senior analysts. No one spoke. Adrian paused for a moment, and none of them noticed the mistake. The room felt tense. Then Adrian turned slightly and gestured toward Emma. But this woman did. The entire hall erupted with shocked whispers. Many employees stared at Emma in disbelief. "She's a cleaner. How could she notice that?" Adrian spoke again. Emma Carter corrected the calculation in less than 30 seconds. Now the room became completely silent. No one expected that. Adrian continued calmly. "She saved this company $12 million. Emma stood quietly beside him, her hands slightly shaking. She still couldn't believe she was standing there. Adrian looked across the room. "For years, we have believed talent only sits behind executive desks." He paused. "But yesterday I learned something important." He looked at Emma again. "Sometimes talent is pushing a cleaning cart down the hallway." The room remained silent. Some employees looked thoughtful. Others looked ashamed. Adrian then said the words that would change Emma's life forever. "Starting today, Emma Carter will no longer work as a cleaner." Gasps spread across the hall. Adrian continued. "She will join our company's financial training program." Several employees looked shocked. But Adrian spoke firmly. "She earned that opportunity with her intelligence and honesty." Emma felt tears forming in her eyes. For years she had believed her dreams were over. But now, in front of the entire company, someone had given her a second chance. Adrian finished his announcement with one final sentence. "A company that ignores talent simply because it comes from humble places is a company that limits its own future." The room slowly filled with applause. At first it was hesitant, but soon it grew stronger. Emma stood there in disbelief. For the first time since leaving university, she felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. And Adrian Hale knew something else. This decision would not only change Emma's life, it would change his as well. 2 years passed. The tall building of Hale Global Investments still stood proudly in the center of Brookfield City. The company continued to grow stronger with every new investment. But inside the company, something had changed. 2 years earlier, Most employees barely noticed the quiet maid who pushed a cleaning cart down the hallway. Now everyone knew the name Emma Carter. Emma had become one of the most respected financial analysts in the company. After Adrian placed her in the training program, Emma worked harder than anyone expected. She studied late into the night, reviewed financial models again and again, and quickly proved she belonged there. Her natural understanding of numbers amazed even the senior analysts who had once doubted her. But Emma never forgot where she came from. She remained humble, polite, and hardworking. Her younger brother and sister were now doing very well in school. Emma had moved them into a better apartment where they could live comfortably and focus on their studies. For the first time in years, Emma finally felt like life was becoming stable again. One quiet evening, Emma stayed late at the office to finish reviewing a new investment report. The office floor was almost empty. The lights from the city outside glowed through the tall glass windows. Emma sat at the same large desk where she once stood holding a cleaning cloth. But now she wore a professional suit and confidently studied financial projections on her laptop. As she finished her calculations, the office door opened softly. Emma looked up. Standing there was Adrian Hale. He walked in with a small smile. "Still working?" he asked. Emma laughed gently. "Some habits don't change easily." Adrian walked closer to the desk. "You finished the report?" Emma nodded and handed it to him. Adrian read through the pages carefully. After a few moments, he placed the report down. "Perfect," he said. Emma smiled. Coming from Adrian Hale, that word meant a lot. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city lights flickered quietly outside the windows. Finally, Adrian leaned against the desk. "You know something, Emma?" Emma looked curious. "What?" Adrian looked thoughtful. "For years I believed success was about finding the smartest people in the biggest offices." He paused. "But the day you corrected my report, you proved me wrong." Emma smiled softly. "I was just doing what anyone would do." Adrian shook his head. "No. Most people would have stayed silent." He looked at her sincerely. "You reminded me that intelligence, honesty, and courage can appear anywhere." Emma felt warmth spread through her chest. Then Adrian said something unexpected. "Would you like to take a walk?" Emma looked surprised but nodded. They walked outside the building and crossed the quiet street toward a small park nearby. The night air was calm. Streetlights glowed softly along the path. For a while they walked without speaking. Then Adrian stopped near a small fountain. "Emma," he said gently. She looked at him. "Yes." Adrian took a small breath. "The best investment I ever made wasn't a company or a project." Emma tilted her head slightly. "What was it?" Adrian smiled. "Believing in you." Emma felt her heart skip. Adrian reached into his jacket pocket and slowly pulled out a small box. Emma's eyes widened in surprise. Adrian opened the box. Inside was a beautiful ring. "Emma Carter," he said quietly. "From the moment I saw your strength, your kindness, and your brilliance, I knew you were someone extraordinary." He took her hand gently. "Will you marry me?" For a moment Emma could not speak. Her mind traveled back through everything that had happened. The long nights, the small apartment, the cleaning cart, the moment she had nervously pointed at the report. And now this moment. Tears filled her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. Adrian smiled and placed the ring on her finger. Months later, in a beautiful garden filled with flowers and sunlight, friends and family gathered for a wedding. Emma walked slowly down the aisle, wearing a simple white dress. Her younger brother and sister stood proudly beside her. At the altar waited Adrian Hale, smiling warmly. The maid who once cleaned his office had become the woman he loved. And as they exchanged their vows, Adrian realized something powerful. Success is not just about money, power, or business. Sometimes the greatest success in life is simply recognizing the value of someone the world almost overlooked. Because sometimes, the person quietly pushing a cleaning cart down the hallway is the one who will walk beside you for the rest of your life. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you find this story worth watching. If you do, Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories, like, comment, and share this video to your friends and loved ones. Your support and engagement encourage me to post more videos. Thanks for watching.